Right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. My name is Victoria Bray. I'm an Associate Director of Recruitment in the Division of Masters and Professional Programs. We're here to talk more about the Master of Science and Engineering program. I've got folks from the School of Engineering with me. We've got a lot of great information that we're going to share, so we'll go ahead and get started. I already introduced myself, but Ted, I'd love to have you introduce yourself as well.
Welcome, people. Thank you very much for your time this evening. I'm Ted Tracy. I'm the Master's Director for Electrical and Computer Engineering. I also am on the faculty in the School of Engineering and handle communications and computer systems types classes as well, which we'll talk a little more about as we get into it. Welcome.
Awesome. We've also got Anne, who's going to be answering questions in the Q&A and dropping some important links with information for you in the chat. So we'll go ahead and start with the agenda. Like I said earlier, we've got a lot of information to share. We'll talk more about the master's program structure, the curriculum, educational tracks. We'll talk more about Brown as well. We want to share information about Providence and the resources that we have specifically for master's students. And then we'll talk about the application requirements. We are going to be answering questions during the session as well as after. So submit all your questions into the Q&A. We'll get to them as we go through the session. We might save some for the end if we feel like they'll be better for the broader group. Also, for folks who are attending the session, I know this is going to come up quite a bit. We do give out application fee waivers for folks who attend our information sessions. So you will be eligible for that. It'll be automatically applied to your application based off of the email address that you used to register for the session. So you should be all set there, but I'm happy to answer any questions about that later on. So just diving right in, I want to talk a little bit more about the programs. We have a number of different programs offered through the School of Engineering. You can see highlighted here the different program directors for each of them. We've got Ted on the call, who is, of course, electrical computer engineering, but we'll talk a little bit about more broadly what our other master's programs offer as well, including the research and faculty. And then, of course, alongside our excellent faculty, we have a student affairs team. Anne's on our School of Engineering student affairs team, really there to help you with everything you might need from the time that you're applying to the program until you're in the program, trying to get connected with industry, trying to get connected with Brown resources, and anything that you might need while you're a student.
Yeah, the student affairs team does a great job moving candidates through the whole conveyor belt of applying, and I highly recommend that you reach out to them if you have specific questions. Anne's is invaluable to help us on all aspects of the application process.
And we'll share that contact information as well, of course.
Yeah. So I think this is my part, the beginning of my part, Victoria. So if you want, I'll take it away from here. And the first point is that this is our new beautiful home. At this point, it's about 7 years old, which is relatively new. Beautiful new facility for both research and classroom teaching and instructions. A high concentration area of people doing just collaboration on the day-to-day problem sets and homeworks and labs and those types of things. So really a positive influence on the overall culture within the engineering school and a great place to hang out. Now, I want you to take note in the front of the lawn in front of the building is this sign called the infinity sign. Obviously, STEM students know what infinity means, but what we use it as our mascot to indicate that our program is all about infinite possibilities. And we're going to talk about some of the wide range of choices and unique aspects of our curriculum that we want to make that possible for you as part of your concentration. So infinite possibilities is a general theme that we like to talk about. Let's get to the next slide. We'll get into some of those details. And so what does infinite possibilities mean? Well, a lot of it's got to do with the fact that we have a very flexible curriculum and set of courses that you can take, and I'll try to give you highlights of some of those as well. But basically, every master's student that enters will work with an advisor like me and design their own program. Granted, it's going to be an 8-course program over the course of 1.5 to 2 years, but you have a lot of flexibility within the courses that you take, both the mandatory ones as well as the ones that you take for fulfillment. And so we have the ability to provide a very flexible program. Next bullet, please. And there's a very wide range of research and classroom areas that you can spend your 8 classes on as well. So a lot of times you're going to be working in some collaborative program that's spanning multiple departments. Like, for example, you could be taking classwork and signal processing in the electrical engineering track, but at the same time, that signal processing is solving a problem that we find in biomedicine, for example. And so you will see often the case that people will take cutting edge classes that are actually spanning multiple departments, and those will be approved uniquely as part of your program. Next slide, please. Next bullet. And what we also like about the program is that it's just about the right size. You're going to be on a first name basis with all your professors. The classes are not difficult to enroll in, so we don't have a difficulty in terms of just having too many students involved. And you're going to get to know the students in your classroom as well as instructors and TAs and everybody else associated with it quite well at the end of a term. And in often the case, you will work with those leaders in different capacities after the class. It could be in a research capacity, or it could be some kind of program that we're doing. So you're really developing relationships. And over the course of a couple of years, you're going to find that's a very good scale of student to instructor to really learn a lot from and really get guidance for your plans post Brown and beyond. Next slide. And then Rhode Island itself is a kind of a unique niche state, smallest state in the union, but uniquely positioned between Boston and New York City, and has a good mix of intellectual activities going on, cultural activities, sporting activities, a very friendly place and very unique in its structure and the things that it offers. So you get your money's worth at Brown from an environment point of view, as the four seasons are all very different. And the culture around the state is very different and a really unique opportunity for you. And Victoria will talk more about that as we go. Please. And when I look at this from a personal point of view, I kind of feel like it's a very good time to get a master's program. I know a lot about Brown. I went to Brown as an undergraduate. I grew up in the state of Rhode Island, so I know about it from an environment point of view. I've come back to Brown after working in industry for many years, and I'm teaching at Brown now. And my perspective is that it's really a very good time to invest in yourself and get a master's. We have great investments that we're making in the leadership of our program, that are thinking about how to grow the program and to be diverse and provide a unique, very different type of experience for our students. We've talked about the flexibility of the program, which is quite nice, the flexibility of the degree requirements and the options that you take. I'm going to hopefully compel you with a set of interesting courses that are examples of kinds of activities that we have in the campus. We also have other programs. So like we have collaborations going on with other schools, for example. So if you want to work and really understand in the area of design, we have a collaborative program called the MADE program that goes on with the school, Rhode Island School of Design as well. So you have the opportunity to do something very unique between school boundaries if you want. And then in general, the thing that makes Brown the greatest attribute we have is the students. And the students are all world-class, top-notch students. And things just go better when students are all equally motivated to learn and advance the state of learning in the programs. So we feel those things, even though there may be questions about funding in the external environment, that will be only temporary. When you look at Brown over the long term, these are the 5 or 6 reasons why Brown's very unique, and it's actually a great time to invest in yourself to get that master's, to get that advanced training that we want. Next slide, please. And in terms of sizing, if you're not familiar with the numbers just yet, we have about 430 grad students. And of those, we have about 140 master's students. So that's probably everybody on this call that's interested in the master's programs. And we have several different concentrations, which we'll tell you about. And then we have a couple other special programs like the MADE program about design that's shared with the RISD, the campus and the capabilities they have at RISD. And then we have a PRIME program, which is really a technical business management program, which is growing beautifully as well. So you add this up, there's a lot of grad students like what we're talking to this evening that will be coming in as your cohort members, and the distribution is quite diverse, and the flexibility and the uniqueness of each of the students is quite obvious. Next slide, please. And the programs that you could concentrate on, if you go on the left-hand side, if you're actually PhD track, then we have 6 very well-known programs that go deep into cutting-edge research and science related to the areas of like electrical and computer engineering, which I represent, or chemical engineering, or biomedical, as you can see on the left. And on the right, we have several different programs that will give you a master's training and some flexibility to take training across different concentrations as well. So things like the biomedical engineering master's program is a very popular one. You have chemical engineering. We have computing, engineering, and sciences. That's the DESIS program, for example. You have the electrical and computer engineering, which we talked about. We talked about the PRIME program as a kind of a business alternative. We have a technical leadership and management program as well. And one of the programs that we think is very recent and very popular is our so-called sustainable energy program, which is in its very first year as we speak. and we're out recruiting for new members to that program, which are very important for the ecology and the environment that we live in. So stay tuned on that. I'll have a little more detail on that as we go. Next slide, please. And because we're having this growth spurt, we're actually able to bring on new faculty members. And bringing on new faculty members brings all kinds of new energy into the program. So we have this point in the last academic year, we brought on 5 different professors in a mix of different engineering skills. Some of those are in electrical and computer engineering, some in biomedical, or some kind of hybrid. It's often the case that these faculty members have expertise in multiple areas. That's what we recruit for. But the really good news is they're bringing in research into the university, and they're bringing in new labs, new opportunities, new equipment, new ways of doing things. And they're also teaching classes, which is a requirement for any new faculty. And so you have an opportunity to learn about the cutting edge research in the classroom. And I'm going to give you some examples of that as we go. But the point is that we are investing in our instructors. Next slide. So what can I actually do in terms of concentrations of programs that I go after? We start with the programs, we call them tracks. And if you really wanted to go deeply into cutting edge science, that would be called the scholarly track, in which case you'd spend most of your time learning about different sciences, mostly in the classroom, but you wouldn't really go deep enough to possibly get a PhD. This would be like, it would be 8 courses that you would have over the course of 1.5 to 2 years time period, depends on your particular schedule. Now, if you did want to go deeper into a certain area of the basic science or to do research, that's really the big differentiator. Then we have a research track, that's program number 2. In that case, you are working with a sponsor that's a PI that's working specifically in this area that you're most intrigued by. And there's a pretty good chance that you want to go on to get a PhD in that area, or you go into industry and work in a research capacity as a research scientist. So it allows you to go a little deeper, but not as broad as the scholarly track would do. And then the last track is called the professional track, which is something that I've involved with to try to create and get off the ground for us. And really, that's all about getting prepared to go back into industry and work in an area of your choice. And so what we do is we supplement your classroom work, which is going to be about 1.5 years' time, with a 6-month co-opportunity, in which case you're working for a company, full-on employee for that period of time, you're getting paid, and you're learning the details of the business and the industry that that individual company is in. And at the same time, that company is looking at you as a possible candidate to bring on as a full-time and hire when you actually leave Brown. So it's a win-win for both parties, but it's very focused in category 3 for the people that really are sure that they want to go into industry and work as opposed to doing research or have an academic path that they're pursuing after Brown. Next slide, please. So let's take a look at some of the courses that we do offer. So right off the bat, the very first course is a new capability that we brought to the school over the last couple of years from Pepe Zhao. And Pepe is one of those 5 new faculty members that we brought into the School of Engineering. And it's all about cloud computing, which is extremely topical at this point. With the emergence of machine learning and cloud computing and the need for capacity at an infinite level, it's increasingly important to understand cloud computing. And Pepe walks us through the architecture of that and also talks about how you can have resources within the cloud that are abstracted away that allow you to dedicate the resources that you need for any particular scientific problem that you're trying to compute. So for example, if you were trying to build some type of communication systems or a modem, for example, and it needed the use of field programmable gate arrays for you to build the logic that's used to develop the modem algorithm that you have, you could use those under resources that are managed by a cloud application. And so we talk about that model and how to develop within that model, which is very topical in the industry right now, especially in light of all the work that's going into machine learning and the progress that some of our computing companies have made in the industry. This is very, very, very compatible with that particular architecture. Next slide, please. And along with that, one of the areas that we're seeing is just an absolute increase in the density of functionality. And that gets down to the designing of custom chips and VLSI components. And yet another new member to our faculty, Mede Celine, is actually on board. He's a world-class expert at designing ICs. He's done this for many, many years at the University of Michigan. And he's actually brought that expertise to Brown. And this class is for the computer engineer that really wants to understand how to miniaturize and get higher performance out of your IC logic and the types of functions that you build. So this is a VLSI class, very hands-on. You're designing. At the end of the course, you have the option to be involved with the tape out to actually build your chip. And so the class is learning firsthand, first class, state-of-the-art type tools to be VLSI systems on a chip, basically. Next slide. And then we have traditional areas, things like fluid mechanics and fluids engineering, and we have those, and you can absolutely go deep in those programs if you want. But what Roberto is doing for us is looking at this as a different type of experience and looking at it as an artistic experience. So when we look at things related to fluid mechanics, they have some very interesting patterns that are recognized, both in color and shape. And so what we've done is made this an artistic class as well to understand how to capture the snapshots of that phenomena. And was such a hit that people are so interested in it that we've actually created a gallery outside our engineering lobby that actually shows some of the greatest things you could imagine being generated and captured on film. And so this is quite an interesting review. You certainly can take the area of fluids engineering at every level of depth, but this is kind of a unique thing that Brown offers, is the ability to look at this from the lens of an artistic production. Next slide, please. And then in a similar way, in terms of cross-function within departments, Kamani Tassan, who's also a dean of the school, is an expert in biomedical systems, and he is looking at how to do optical microscopy. Now, this is a field that's going to be a mix of physics, engineering, a little bit of mathematics involved, and certainly a little bit of medicine or biology. And so this is a really good example where you may take a class to learn the details of the state of the art of optical microscopy, but you're going to learn a little bit about all those different fields all at the same time. So this is an area where we are collaborating across the departments quite heavily and giving you a very unique experience and a skill that would be state of the art and something that you can use when you lead Brown. Next class, please. Next slide. Oh, and then this is my class. And I've been teaching this class for the last couple of years. And it used to be called microwave engineering, and it used to have to do with waveguides, and it was very static. And what we are converting the class into is more of a radio engineering class. When you think about the iPhone or smartphones as being the most popular device on the planet, and the way those communicate with one another and to other cellular base stations, for example, is through all high-speed, high-frequency microelectronics. And that is in the field of radio engineering. And we actually learn the basics of that. But towards the latter half of the class, we talk about how it's becoming more about high-speed digital communications in radio engineering. And at the end of the class, we actually will build a radio transmitter and receiver that runs at a gigahertz. So it's a very unique experience to tape out and actually build a circuit with your colleagues in the class and do something very unique and try to modernize everything we're learning about radio engineering, because this is an area that's exploding in front of our eyes, and it's an area that Brown wants to invest in to make sure that we're using cutting edge techniques. Next slide, please. And it isn't all about techie stuff. I talk about collaboration with different departments, but we also had the Nelson School of Management that actually brings up into new areas about how organizations look at business problems. How do technology products make their way to market? What are the proper leadership techniques to do that? In this particular class, Professor Banu will work closely to have you understand how to fit in an organization. So when you lead Brown at some point and you work in industry, how to navigate an organization, how do you make your skills be relevant to the mission of the company? And she's an expert in a very popular class to learn how to work within the tech world and how to work in different organizational structures. And there's a lot to that, the softer skills, if you will, but something very useful for people to know when they go on to life after Brown. Next slide, please. So you may ask, oh, by the way, do I have to do a thesis? And in our usual way at Brown, we consider that to be an option as well. And so the breakdown is this. If you're going to be taking the research track where you're going to go deep, it makes a lot of sense for you to do a thesis, but you have to have a reasonable topic, and you want to have the sponsorship of a PI, principal investigator, that can help you with that particular area. And often that may be a person of a class that you had taken and you were really intrigued by. You don't need to make this decision about whether to do thesis or non-thesis until about the end of your first semester. But you do want to line up the possibilities. If you want to go deeper and you think you're going to be PhD bound, then this is an area that I'd recommend doing that. Now, on the other hand, if you're more focused about getting back to industry when you're done and you're just trying to get an update on several different topical areas, that's probably not an area that you want to do research in. Then you'd rather probably not take the research program because it's going to be 2 or 3 class slots of the 8 that you have to pick. And you want to make your time spent mostly in the classroom learning new fields, or possibly working through the professional option with a company that will give you more practical hands-on training for the workplace after Brown. So you have flexibility here, something we absolutely talk about with your advisor from the very first day that you arrive on campus. And we will be advising you along the 2-year journey that you're on about whether the thesis makes sense or not, or how to calibrate the progress that you're making in that area. Now, if you do want to go on for a PhD, this makes a lot of sense because often what we find when people apply for PhDs at Brown or otherwise in other locations, that it's really important to talk about your research. So at this point, it's kind of expected when you move on to the PhD area, and you're welcome to partake in some of our programs, which I'll show you about next. Next slide. And so what would those research possibilities be? So let's take a look at a couple examples. Again, one is about the traditional field, applied mechanics or fluid mechanics or fluids of thermal sciences. All these are kind of synonyms. And we have deep research in this area. It's very mathematical in places, so we put a lot of emphasis on our ability to compute and some of our compute resources for this. But we've also done something a little different. Like we're looking at things that are a fluids phenomena, for example, that may affect the coastline because it's a green initiative that we have. And we're trying to understand the erosion factors and what's causing that and trying to look at this from a mechanical point of view. Okay. Or it could be we're trying to understand what undersea vehicles mean. Well, autonomous vehicles that are underwater, a relatively new field, obviously taking a lead from what's happening with mobiles, cars. But we're trying to look at the study of how those vessels actually work with underwater, for example. So again, Brown has a unique slant to a traditional science area. And we'll see in a later slide that there's an area related to drones and the properties that it has in terms of the way it thrusts itself through the space are very related to some of the fluid mechanics problems that we study in the traditional classroom. Next slide. And that leads in well to one of our so-called ambassadors. This is Anoop. He started as a master's student, now as a PhD program. And in the daytime, he is a fluids PhD candidate and doing very traditional work. At the nighttime, he's also working with the computer science department and he's developing drones. And specifically what he's trying together is the patterns of thrust for the drone are very similar to what we find in fluid mechanics. And so he's trying to tie those two together and learn from that and try to build a better drone from that process. So this is a good area where there's collaboration going on between those two different science areas. And Anoop is a wonderful student, and he comes to help us many times in our recruiting activities, and will be available to consult for both people that are applying to the school, but people that have been accepted and are looking at some of the possible pathways. Next slide, please. We have biomedical engineering, very hot area for us. Biomedical engineering as an undergraduate degree is probably our most prominent. And in the graduate program, we have many, many masters and PhD candidates as well. So this is a hot area of both just practical knowledge and capabilities to go back into the working world with in health sciences, but also to do deep research. And so you see a timeline here, which has all been grown very richly over the course of the last 20, 25 years. And as the world miniaturizes, as it certainly is doing in terms of communications and chip design, we're doing more impressive things of putting technologies into humans. Whether it's inserts that go into the different organs in our body, or if it's actually some type of chip that's actually inserted in your brain, we are studying that type of problem constantly, all enabled by the miniaturization of our electronics and our capabilities of computing. So you see some really cutting edge research in this area. So this is an area that, if in the health sciences you want to learn about it a little bit more depth, this would be a wonderful concentration to go into. Next slide, please. And in fact, what we've created just in the last year is the Breath program, which is a research opportunity, which is a mix of different physics, engineering, and biology and biomed type things. And it's specifically for master's students, not for PhDs. And so we're trying to take this cross-functional approach of using computer and digital systems and digital health topics and give a student a real appreciation for digital health before they go out into the world. And digital health is also an exploding field, but also is highly regulated. And so there's all kinds of constraints and good technology going on and good new policy going on. It's a wide range of things. And this Breath research program, it gives you the ability to be handling that when you leave Brown. Next slide, please. And then this is my field, which is electrical and computer engineering. Everybody knows about the use of computers and communication systems is very popular. And we have a long list of research interests we've done through different grants and different professors that have been tenured at Brown for many years. whether it's photonics or nanomaterials or just traditional analog digital design or circuit design or communications like I'm doing with my radio engineering class. There's a wide range of different computer and electrical engineering activities that you could do research in. A lot of it will depend on the cycles for the different grants that we have or that we're entertaining, but there's a wide range of research. If you want to talk more about that, let's do that offline. I can give you a lot more detail about some of those programs and some of the classes you can take to really to learn the details of that research. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned before, we have a program called MADE. We sponsor this with RISD, which is a very well-known design school in Providence, Rhode Island, as well, literally right down the hill from where Brown's campus is located. And in this program, if you really want to understand the details of design, and design is very topical right now in the industry, you get a chance to learn about first-class design principles from a structural and an artistic point of view at RISD, mixed with some of the detailed mechanical and electrical engineering programs that we have. In my other class that I teach, which is embedded systems design, we have RISD students in there all the time that are trying to build some kind of smart product. And so we're showing how we can marry the traditional electrical and mechanical engineering with what we find to be artistic. And this is the kind of thing that builds the next Apple products that we all see. And we are always indicating how positive the design approach is. As examples, this is what design is all about. It's very topical. And we have two world-class players that have put this very unique program together. Now, this particular program starts at a different time of year than the typical fall entry. So if you're interested in MADE, please reach out. We'll tell you a little more detail about that. But it's definitely a world-class program and a very topical area and has a very good following as we go. Next slide, please. And then very recent to the School of Engineering is we're introducing an emphasis on sustainable energy, which anybody who's reading papers and understanding the state of the ecology, we know that we have to do things to get away from fossil fuels. So we're looking at wind and solar and other types of energy sources. But it isn't just the raw technology of that, it's also the policy related with that as well. And so we believe there's a real opportunity to train the next generation leaders, really all about the details that you need to manage this effectively for all of society. There's some wonderful examples. We have some great solar and wind farms that are here in the New England area that have been very effective, and how we can harness that and turn that into a way to really make our culture, our e-culture, more effective, then would be a way to go. So this is an area that's very topical. We're just starting the program now, but we are recruited heavily for masters in this area. And it's a one-year program, so it'll be very action-packed. That will give you that mix of technology behind new energy sources, but also some of the policy that you need to be able to manage within that world as well. Next slide. I'd mentioned the co-op program. Again, this is a little different approach for an individual candidate that wants to supplement their classroom work with working for real industry companies, big leaders in that space. And we offer that, an internship a lot of times is a 6 or 8 week program in the middle of the summer. This is a little more serious. This is a little more dedicated to the company. And you are a full-time worker for that group for a long period of time, like between 3 and 6 months. You'll get paid nicely in the program typically. But at the same time, you will have to do a real complete job to be able to help and offer a complimentary service for the company that you're working for. I'll have an example for that in the next slide. I will say this program is now open for international students as well as domestic. So that's an important criterion. So we can now offer that. We understand how to make this work from a visa point of view. So this is a really attractive way for you to get into the market in the US and to be able to develop industry ties that you may go work for when you're done with Brown. Next slide, please. And just like Anup was a very good example of our PhD researcher type, it turns out that Will Wu was a great ambassador for the program as well. He's helped us on many recruiting activities, but he also was a co-op that worked at Amazon. And specifically in the classroom, he studied robotics. And then when he went to go work for Amazon, he actually worked on the Proteus program, which was their workplace robot program. So it was a really nice marriage to be able to take what you learn in the classroom and apply it to a leading edge company that's really using robotics and automation. And so he worked at Amazon for a course of 4 or 5 months, got paid very nicely. He worked really hard. And at the end of that time period, he got a full offer to go work for them. Now, it turns out that he ended up going back to get a PhD because what he learned and loved was robotics. So now he's back getting his PhD, but he could have just as easily gone to industry and worked on this co-op program to really get that leading edge experience and really have a good place to go work when he was finished with his classwork at Brown. Next slide. Now, this may sound like a lot of different programs and it's complicated, and we do that by design because that's what we want to promote with our flexibility. But we don't leave you alone on that. And so we've kind of categorized these different possible degrees and shown templates about how to place your classes to go after these different concentrations. So like if you were in a biomedical capacity and you want to know about medical imaging, we'd be able to enumerate certain classes that you should be taking over the course of the semesters that you're at Brown. Or if you were actually in signal processing, but you wanted to go work in industry as part of the professional track, then we show a different template that will show you which classes you want to go. And I wrote many of the paragraphs in this handbook and would be, as an advisor, be working with you to design your templates and to use these templates as examples about the way you can build your program over the course of 18 or 24 months. So we do map all that out. And each concentration, in my case, it's School of Engineering, but it could be material science or chemical engineering, has a different handbook because they emphasize on different type of classes and different templates. So we'll give you this information as soon as you get into Brown, or sooner if you'd like to see it, to allow you to understand what the possible mix of classes would be for your degree. Next slide, please. And of course, we're always very friendly to veterans. We have great programs to support veterans. We appreciate the fact that you serve for our country. We want to help you in every way possible make that transition from the military to the classroom. In my class alone, I have 2 or 3 vets, so it's very common. And there's some really nice programs that will make it very financially attractive for you to move on with the vets benefits programs to get into a master's program. And it'd be a great way to re-enter into the workplace when you're done with your military commitment. So we are very veterans friendly. Please contact us if you want to know more about the different programs that we have. And then my very last slide is that, the good news is that we think it's great timing to come to Brown and develop this master's program and beyond, but you really can't go wrong. If you want to go into industry, what you'll learn in those 8 courses that you take will be invaluable because we're going to hand select those to be as most useful as possible for the field that you plan to go in. So if you go the professional track or the industry track, you're going to be well trained, and we have lots of great companies that we have as partners that would be places that you could go work for. Now, there's no guarantee we're going to give you that job or get you that job, but we have entrees to allow you to research who they would be and the right kinds of connections to make sure that the interview process is going well. At the same time, if you want to go deep academically, we have good relations with several well-known PhD programs across the globe. So they're all compatible and collaborative at some level. I've worked with several students that were masters going on for PhDs. I've done letters of recommendation for, and all these schools that you see on the chart are the kinds of places that we write letters of recommendations for. So if you want to take Brown as a stepping stone, get into research at some level, and then move on to a different program, a different university, we encourage that. And we have great partnership there. So whether you go professional track or PhD track, you have great options. And so we chart these outcomes, and we think you have some great choices, and hopefully you can join us to as part of your journey ahead. I think that's all I have for now. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions. There'll be a Q&A period at the end of the talk as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Ted. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about Brown University more broadly. So like Ted was talking about earlier, Brown is in Providence, Rhode Island, a small city in New England, about an hour and 15-minute train ride to Boston, and just a few hours to New York City. So really well situated within the Northeast, easy access to a lot of major cities. Also easy to get around all over the sort of Northeastern corridor if you want to go a little bit further afield. We've got trains and buses that go, as far as DC, Philadelphia. So just super easy to get around. Providence is a pretty walking, biking friendly city. You don't necessarily need a car to live in Providence. There's a lot to do in the way of art, culture, outdoor activities. Rhode Island is the ocean state. So if you're interested in any boating, swimming, if you'd just like to go to the beach, it's a really great place to be. We have pretty easy access to the shoreline. Restaurants are also excellent. So we have a culinary institute in the area. So our restaurants, we really sort of bat out of our league. I heard a statistic recently that Providence has more restaurants per capita than New York City, which is a fun fact. And then as far as culture is concerned, we have the Rhode Island School of Design. Ted was talking earlier. We partner with RISD on one of our master's programs. Our students get free entrance into the RISD Museum as well. So a lot of activity to do if you're interested in art, music, culture, or food. So here's a sort of deeper dive into Providence and the neighborhoods that our students frequent. The main area of Brown's campus is located in College Hill. That's where the building that Ted showed you earlier is. That's where the majority of engineering classes are located. But Brown has a pretty wide footprint in Providence. So you can see the areas that are hearted on the screen. Those are the areas that our students tend to frequent, either living, going out to eat, doing recreational activities, or attending classes. Our Brown University graduate apartment housing is in downtown in the Jewelry District. Really easy to get to the Jewelry District from College Hill to and from. We have a Brown University shuttle that students can ride. Anywhere that Brown has a footprint, the bus will take you. And we also get free ridership on the Rhode Island Public Transit Authority buses, all of our students do. So easy to get around Providence. The RIPTA buses go also a little bit further in Rhode Island, so you can get out to the beaches and things like that. I want to really highlight our Center for Master Student Excellence. These are just some of the centers and offices that you might interact with while you're a master student at Brown, but really where our master students tend to congregate and where the services for master students are congregated is the Center for Master Student Excellence. So we have a whole student affairs team as well as a career and professional development team. All of our master's programs are administered through the Division of Masters and Professional Programs where the Center for Master Student Excellence is housed. So we really put on a lot of activities for our students, master students specifically, to be able to network outside of their programs and to be able to put our students in contact with important resources across Brown to be able to be successful well academically as well as extracurricularly. So we're partnering with a lot of the offices that you're seeing on the screen, places that have activities for students. They sponsor clubs for graduate students as well as undergraduate students, but then they also offer important resources. So I also want to talk more about the career and professional development through the Center for Master Student Excellence. So career and professional development, really, we have these layers of support at Brown. So Ted was already talking about the support that's offered through the School of Engineering, the School of Engineering programs. The School of Engineering does a great job with career professional development. They have a lot of industry contacts and a lot of programs like the co-op program Ted was talking about. But if you need resources like resume, cover letter writing, optimizing your LinkedIn profile, really anything from the time you matriculate at Brown until you accept an offer when you leave, our career services folks are there to help you. And we have STEM specific career advising as well. So, especially for the folks on that call, it's a pretty interesting option. I definitely look at our master's career website. That's a great way to get an idea of the types of opportunities we have for students for career and professional development. You can see on the screen some of the options that we had for upcoming events in October, but really we run these sessions all year round, including that one-on-one advising. We also have the Center for Career Exploration, which is servicing Brown students more broadly. And there's career fairs as well as recruiting events that are offered through the Center for Career Exploration. We use Handshake pretty extensively. And then, of course, one of the great perks of attending Brown and career and professional development is that we have a really excellent alumni base that you get access to as a student. So let's talk through the application a little bit more. Here's a high-level overview of everything that we are going to require as a part of the application to our School of Engineering programs. An important caveat here is a couple of our programs might have some additional requirements. For instance, our design engineering program has a portfolio requirement. If you have any questions about that, you can definitely visit our program finder pages, or I will also drop my contact information in the chat so that you can contact me to get a better sense of your specific requirements for your program. But generally speaking, the School of Engineering programs are going to require you to submit an unofficial transcript as a part of your application. You will be required to follow up with a official transcript if you end up attending Brown, but for the purposes of reviewing your application, we can accept just an unofficial transcript from your university. You should be submitting any transcripts that you have from places that you've attended after secondary school. So if you transferred or if you have multiple degrees, we definitely want to see all of those transcripts. We're going to have you submit your CV or your resume, which outlines your research, your work experience, your skills, your education, all in one place. Personal statement, you're going to do 1,000 to 1,500 words. We want to hear about your professional experiences, your academic experiences, your interest in the particular field of engineering that you're interested in going into, and your goals as they pertain to obtaining a master's degree from Brown. You should be really specific here. Talk about Brown, talk specifically about the program that you're interested in, and tell your story about where you want to go with that degree. It's also one of the only opportunities that you have to show us your writing skills and your communication skills. So you should be treating it like a professional piece of communication, so that we can get a really good sense of your communication skills and your ability to be in the master's program. Video essays, we have a series of prompts that you will be invited to respond to. That through the application, you'll, as you navigate the application, be able to see the video responses. There's some instructions that go along with it, so make sure that you're responding specifically to the prompt. And if you have any technical difficulties, of course, you can always reach out to us. We require 3 letters of recommendation as a part of the application. We have to see all 3 letters of recommendation in order to make a decision. So make sure that you're asking for all 3 letters of recommendation, and you're asking for recommendations from folks who know you really well, who can speak to you specifically about your potential success in a master's program, either in the classroom or professionally. For applicants whose native language is not English and do not or will not have a degree from an institution where English is the sole language of instruction, we're going to have you to submit either the TOEFL or the IELTS, and then the GRE is not required for the School of Engineering master's programs.
Let me address there's a question in the Q&A thread related to the video essay prompts. So I was involved with designing some of those, and so roughly we put them in 2 categories. One is, what is unique about yourself as an applicant? When, for example, did you think that engineering was the area that you wanted to specialize in, or what big time event happened in your career that made you really think about getting an advanced degree in engineering? So some of those are very personal to your own plight. But then also the second group of questions are related to, why did Brown make sense for you for the kinds of things that you're interested in? What was it about the curriculum that made you think this is a good fit for you? And so roughly there's like 2 groups of questions. There's like 15 questions in each group. And you'll be asked a couple of those, I believe. It's somewhat of a random selection as to what you'd be exposed with. But you're being asked to record something between 30 and 60 seconds to respond to those kinds of questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Ted. So here's an overview of all of the deadlines for the application for the upcoming intakes. So right now we're looking ahead to the summer of 2026 and the fall of 2026 for our deadlines. We have a February 1st priority deadline for a bunch of our programs. That February 1st priority deadline is an opportunity for you to apply earlier. You'll hear from us earlier, and then you can start this sort of process of matriculating earlier if you're admitted. Once you can enroll earlier, then that sort of starts the dominoes of being able to do things like get on housing wait lists, start the visa process, all that good stuff. So that's sort of why we encourage folks to apply by the priority deadline. You have up until 2 weeks after the deadline to finalize your application and submit any additional materials like letters of recommendation and things like that. So definitely applying by the priority deadline. If you have that application complete, definitely submit it and then follow up with those additional materials. Final deadline for most of the programs is going to be April 1st. If you apply by April 1st, your application needs to be complete by 2 weeks after that, and then we'll get you a decision on a rolling basis. We'll release all of our decisions for their priority deadline, and then decisions will roll from there on out. So now we want to answer some questions in the Q&A. I know that Anne has been answering questions throughout the session, but I know there's still a few left. Definitely follow us on social media, check out our website. A great way to get an idea of what a day in the life of a master's student is like at Brown is to see it on social media. Also, events at Brown is a great place to see what sorts of events might be available to you as a master's student. And then stay connected with us if you have any questions about the application process. You can reach out to us either at masters_admissions@brown.edu, or you can, if you have any questions about the program, reach out to the engineering department, School of Engineering directly. So yeah, thank you for coming, and let's start to get at that Q&A, Ted.
Well, there's one straightforward question about how do I know if I have the right GPA requirement or not? There's really no hardline GPA requirement. To be honest, and I have a chance to review many of the applications, if not all of them. The bigger issue is trying to normalize the GPAs or the transcripts from the different schools that source our candidates. So what we look for is we look for the relevant classes that will help you make progress in your area of concentration. So, a lot of times it's just trying to figure out the relevant GPA, not necessarily what your absolute GPA is. And we have to look at your transcript more closely to make sure that we're looking at the areas that we care a lot about. So, for example, if you're an ECE major, that means electrical and computer engineering, we want to make sure that you've taken classes in logic design and computer architecture and you have some programming skills. And frankly, although this is maybe kind of a negative point, we don't really care as much about some of the history and other classes that you may have taken, the non-STEM classes that you may have taken. It's not really particularly relevant to the depth that you're going to go into for a master's. So we try to look at the GPA more that way. And then I'm sure our filtering of that GPA may be different than the way this originating school may look at it. So we kind of pick and choose what we want. But there isn't any hardcore requirement that says that you must be at a certain level. It's more interpreted and make sure that it's covering the classes that we think are most essential for you to advance in your master's program.
So there's a question here about going into a PhD program from the master's, specifically at Brown. How hard is it to make it to the master's program if you don't have any faculty connections? And then, they would like to transition to a PhD program, but have heard that if they apply direct to a PhD program, faculty members at the same institution might hesitate since they don't have a sense of the work ethic of the student, I think is the question. If you want to read it, it's that first question in the Q&A
Yeah.
instead.
So I have a little bit of experience with that. Last year we had a couple wonderful TAs for our classes that were both master's students that went on very successfully to PhD programs, and they had multiple choices of PhD programs. There's a few points here that I'd want to make. One is that, first of all, when you come to university, if you don't know a professor's research already, you have to get to know that. And so that means typically you want to take a class from that professor and learn what the field is really about and save any judgment until you finish that particular class. And if you had a great time with the class and learned a lot, then I'm sure that professor would be very open to talking about taking you into their lab. I mean, it depends a lot on funding and situations, but if the person doesn't know you yet, they may be a little bit reticent. But if you've taken their class very successfully and you've been motivated throughout the course of the class, that's how you get your entree into research. Now, what it's also true is that when you're applying for those PhD programs, at least the two candidates that I advised last year, they have to have some basis of research that they've already done. That's kind of expected as part of the PhD application process. So Brown has many of those programs, as we've outlined. The two cases that I was involved with last year got very involved with different research teams around the campus, and they were able to use that as a platform to develop their application for the PhD programs, and they got into nice programs. And so that's how you acquire it. I think in that sense, Brown is a very good feeder school to get into other PhD programs. All PhD programs across the US are being hampered at some level by the funding and the confusion about the funding that's coming. So we're kind of in an unusual time for the next couple of years. But in general, I think you'll find that you can get world-class research done as a master's, and that will be a really good platform to build on to apply to different PhD programs. And I see success in that area every day.
Do
Next.
you need to have an engineering undergraduate degree to be eligible for a master's degree?
Absolutely not. We like you to have a STEM degree, that helps. And so if you're a physics student from undergrad or physics and econ or something like that, but you have a certain inclination about science, then I'm sure you can apply that in the School of Engineering. The thing about what we're doing in engineering is we're taking the basic aptitude in science and trying to get you to apply it to solve problems and create innovation in society. So there's no limit to that. Steve Jobs was not a scientist by trade, but boy, did he make an innovation or many innovations. So we don't really look at that. We look beyond that. We just want to make sure that you enjoy science and engineering and that you have that aptitude and can do well in your programs. Next.
So I think we answered this question as well. Um, How important is it to reach out to Brown researchers or professors? Does it have an impact on your chances of being admitted?
Not really. I think I mean, if you can do that and they respond, and to be very honest, for some professors will respond and some will not respond. But you can reference that in the essays that you write or your statement of purpose that's part of your application. If you really have researched one of the professor's programs and you've made contact with that professor, then that helps to fill that into your personal statement. That will help for sure. But it's not at all a requirement. I'm involved with reading all those applications, and we never have the hardcore requirement there. It would help things if you really have a unique insight about what you want to do and that you have a complementary partner on the campus. And if you've actually made contact with that individual, that's a great thing. But don't feel left out if that isn't in place. And many times it takes a semester or even two for you to find the right spot of research on campus. So it'd be great if it all works out that way, but it isn't essential for most candidates.
For students coming from biomedical engineering backgrounds, what are the most important ECE fundamentals to acquire before or early in the program?
I'm a little bit biased in this area. I think things like signal processing and signal analysis in electrical circuits is actually super useful because I think in many cases in these biomedical capacities, we're trying to model some neural system, some electrical system. So my bent is towards that type of circuits and signal processing background, and there's tons of applications in biomedical that would complement that. Now, that being said, if you're in biomedical because you want to build a better prosthesis or an artificial limb, then you need more of a mechanical engineering type background, possibly. But what I will say is that I'm finding the boundaries between biomedical applications, electrical engineering, and mechanical, those boundaries are blurring every day. And you need to know a little bit about all that to be able to do an effective innovation in that space. And that really works well for our focus, which is to provide collaboration across these boundaries. Next slide.
So do you know of any of the sustainable energy courses that they're offering, that any of the new coursework that they've designed?
Yes. The number is that you need to take 8 classes. The slide I have in the deck, which I'm sure we can make available to you, is 8 classes, but it's not necessarily 8 science classes. It's more like 6 and 2 in terms of technology classes, which will get into the engineering behind the different energy systems that we have and the real system design of those fields. And there's like a couple that are policy related, like how do governments actually use the energy? What type of imbalance does it generate in the community? What are the economic incentives to do that? So we don't want you to take all tech, and we want you to have a mix of tech plus some policy things, and we highlight those classes. Um, there's a professor that's my colleague that is running that program as a program director, Rod Beardsford. So if you want to talk to Rod, he would be a wonderful guy to give you a lot more depth about exactly what the makeup of those classes are or what the handbook looks like for that particular sustainable energy program. But I know that it's not all 8 classes of one just technology. It's a mix of things.
Right. Uh, Similar question about background, about having a background in computer science and math, wants to pursue a master's in ECE. Should they take some ECE courses first to show sort of their chops, or should they just apply to the program?
Well, I think you can always just apply to the program. If you have a computer science and math background, there's many topics within the ECE that you can handle nicely. I personally believe it makes a lot of sense for you to have if you come into ECE, that you've had at least some introductory to digital logic circuits, digital circuits, for example, microprocessor-based circuits, and things like computer architecture. Those would be probably the most critical skills to have seen before you come into the program. But we don't necessarily have a black or white mix of classes that we must see. I think it would be fairly suspicious that if you didn't have any of those classic digital systems type courses, but you had a really strong computer science or programming background and a math background, it'd be kind of suspicious to us that you haven't been exposed to some elements of computer engineering or electrical. But I think you can also clarify that in your statement of purpose or your personal statement that comes with the application as well. And again, all that stuff gets read. So we will handle things on a case-by-case basis for sure.
All right, we will give folks one
I,
more minute.
I think there's a question there about clarifying the deadlines. If we've not done that, I think you went through that in pretty good depth.
Yeah, Anne's typing an answer to the question.
Awesome.
Is Brown strong in robotics or artificial intelligence compared to other traditional ECE fields?
So I mentioned Anoop was an area that he's actually working in drones. This computer science group is in robotics. And Nora, who's my counterpart, she's the academic advisor for ECE, is building a quite significant lab in robotics and drones. So we're getting there. And in our computer science department, from an algorithmic point of view or from a software development point of view, we have a lot of involvement with robotics and machine learning and such. A lot of computer vision classes. So yeah, you'll see that there's many classes that are in this area, and there's replicate courses in these areas that have slightly different emphasis amongst them. So I would say it's not the biggest program in the world, but it's a strong program that's growing every day. And I think the onset of some of the new faculty we brought in are really going to help grow the research associated with those areas as well.
All right. Question about when there's going to be a specific Prime information session. I can share a link to the next information session for Prime.
Yeah, and I think oh, there you go.
Oh, thanks, Anne. Appreciate you.
I think that question is more about 2.85 GRE. You mean GPA, right?
Yeah, I think so. Generally, all our students have at least a 3.0 GPA. That's a minimum that's set at the graduate level. That's the general floor for admission to the master's programs.
But it does depend a little bit on how that grade is actually composed.
And if there's extenuating circumstances, of course, like if those are outlined in the application, there's, some wiggle room there, but that's the sort of general rule for the graduate school in our master's programs. Advice for someone debating on whether or not they should go for a master's, somebody who's currently a junior in our undergrad interested in sustainability.
Yeah, I'm a kind of biased person. I feel strongly about the master's, not so much because I'm teaching in the curriculum these days, but because I took a master's as well. The only thing I would suggest is look at the option of working for a couple years before you go get your master's, because in doing the work routine first, you get a little more perspective about how industry really works, and maybe get exposed to a field that's really a growing field, and maybe an area that you want to double down and actually get more depth in. So I think it does make a lot of sense for people that aren't quite sure how to apply some of this new knowledge to take possibly like a gap program before you go back to school. But I feel strongly that a master's will give you a level of expertise that will make a big difference in your career if you go into industry, if you're taking the right kinds of classes. Now, if you're taking something like sustainable energy, as I think was mentioned in the question, that field is extremely dynamic right now. So there's two sides of that. One is you may want to get in on the ground floor before it explodes. So you may want to go work for a while, or you may want to let the smoke settle to some degree and see the industry develop before you go back and study the things that are really going to make a long-term impact in that particular field. So you can argue it a lot of different ways, but in general, I'm a strong believer in getting your master's.
All right, I think that's it for questions, and it is right at 8 o'clock. So thank you everybody for joining us. If you have any questions, of course, you can follow up with us. But other than that, have a great night.
And I don't know if we give our emails address, but if anybody's interested in asking further questions along those lines, feel free to reach out. What's the easiest way to do that? I'll be more than happy to handle any emails that come in.
I'll put my email address,
Okay,
and folks can reach out to me, and I'm more than happy to make that connection.
great.
Yeah, I put my email address as well.
Yeah, I'll be more than happy to talk to anybody through email as well.
All right, awesome. Sounds good. That was email
Thank
address.
you for coming tonight.
Awesome.
Thanks. Bye,
Great.
everyone.
Have a good night.
You too.